You might think that a goal for Democrats in the 2022 midterms would be to defend the majority and make sure that swing seats don't go red. Sadly, that is not the case for the 5th ranking House Democrat, Hakeem Jeffries. His priority, it seems, is beating progressive challengers against Democratic incumbents in deep blue districts. So let me give you more, because there's a new PAC in town. Jeffries and 2 of his House Democrat allies on Wednesday rolled out the first slate of endorsements from Team Blue PAC, a political action committee intended to protect incumbents from intra-party attacks. The endorsements and their attendant $5,000 campaign contributions are the strongest demonstration of support yet from Jeffries and his allies, and serve as a warning shot to primary challengers seeking to unseat incumbents as Democrats fight to hold on to their fragile majorities. Okay, so what are the seats that we're looking at? What are these races? Pretty predictable, and one very familiar one. So the lawmakers united in effort to provide resources to the increasing number of House Democrats who face primary challenges, in particular from the left. That circumstance faces the 5 incumbents who received endorsements on Wednesday. Representatives Shontel Brown, Danny Davis, Carolyn Maloney of New York, Donald Payne of New Jersey, and Dina Titus of Nevada. All of whom are being primaried by candidates who were endorsed by the Justice Democrats, including our Senator Nina Turner, who is currently challenging Shontel Brown, of course. Everyone support that campaign. Others are Keena Collins primarying Danny Davis in Illinois, Amy Villela in Nevada going up against Dina Titus, Suraj Patel going up against Carolyn Maloney in New York. Again, all of these are Justice Democrats. So here we are, and they're justifying, before I go to you, Cenk, they're justifying themselves, this new PAC. They're saying, this is Josh Gottheimer, remember the guy who tried to strong arm against the Build Back Better bill from the center, that was fun. Quote, we want to support common sense members who are delivering for their districts and helping advance the Democratic agenda to create jobs and cut costs for their constituents. Who's cutting costs? The centrists or the progressives for their constituents? Who wants to extend child tax credits? Progressives or the centrists? Who wants expanding Medicare? Cenk, when this news hit you, we were in the morning meeting, you were livid.
Yeah.
Thoughts on it?
So, look, the article is actually better than you might expect, or I expected, because in the beginning it looked like they were trying to paint these 3 as neutral. But no, they explain later in the article that this new PAC is almost completely funded by corporations. So I still think that they are way too kind to these 3 corporate goons. And they describe Hakeem Jeffries as being part of the Progressive Caucus. That's a good one. Okay, is he technically in the Progressive Caucus? But yes, but if you don't know this, and every reporter that covers politics should know this, half of the Progressive Caucus is not remotely progressive. And I don't mean like they don't meet up to my standards. No, I mean they're also in conservative caucuses. They just want to be in every caucus. They're not at all real. I wish the Progressive Caucus is as large as its numbers indicate, but no, half of them are totally conservative Democrats that put their name in there for marketing purposes. And Hakeem Jeffries is a perfect example. He's one of the biggest corporate Democrats in the country. In fact, he started this PAC backed completely by corporations to try to defeat progressives who are free of corporate PAC money, and hence actually try to fight for you guys and try to fight for democratic principles, which Hakeem Jeffries is completely opposed to. So he says a lot of humorous things here, Francesca. So let me quote a couple here.
Yeah.
He says, it's important to support effective legislators for delivering for the American people in partnership with the Biden administration. Now let's break that down. Number one, wait a minute, the progressives were in partnership with the Biden administration. They were the ones trying to pass Build Back Better. It was conservative Democrats that killed Build Back Better. So what do you mean in partnership with the Biden administration? Hakeem, you're going with an old talking point. The old talking point is, hey, rest of the press, remember, corporate Democrats are the real Democrats. We don't agree with any of the democratic principles. We never pass any legislation for the American people or our voters. But you must declare that we are the real Democrats and we are with Democratic leadership. But in this case, a lot of you guys, including Josh Gottheimer, fought against the Biden agenda. Progressives tried to pass the Biden agenda. So Hakeem Jeffries is clearly lying there. And then he said, support effective legislators. What do you mean effective? You guys didn't pass anything. So you passed COVID relief bills. Trump passed a couple of those. And then you passed an infrastructure bill laden with corporate pork. Yes, your donors, Representative Jeffries and Gottheimer, they got rich off of it. And there's some good things in the bill, to be fair. But you said that you were going to do Build Back Better with it. I mean, Hakeem Jeffries, let's take him at his word. He says he's a progressive. I've got more on that in a second. Okay, he says his corporate PAC money doesn't affect him at all. Okay, all right, but let's take you at your word. Oh, you really wanted to pass Build Back Better and the progressive priorities in there. Well, then according to your own logic, you failed and you are obviously not an effective legislator. So none of your quote makes any sense. But honestly, Francisca, none of his quotes make sense. I'm going to get to more in a second.
No, can I go to the next one? I mean, just to add some meat to what you're saying in terms of this Team Blue, which is so funny, because every time a progressive sticks their neck out for a piece of legislation, i.e., like the vast majority, what the vast majority of Americans want, they're always called like not being team players. But of course, when Gottheimer and the rest want to hold back, they're being part of the team, right? It doesn't, how does it not work both ways? So, but if you do a cursory look at who's already donated, it's everyone from insurance companies and groups to financial groups to Coors Light and even Comcast. So the corporate money bundled in this PAC is already there. Jeffries, of course, as Cenk noted, is very defensive of this strategy. And he says, graphic 7, why are members of the hard left targeting progressive members of Congress and then trying to act as though they're engaging in some ideological contest against the rest of us? Jeffries says, it's worth noting, the writer writes, of course, that Team Blue PAC isn't defending any incumbents from challenges from the right. So what happens if Democrats lose seats in Congress? Who do you think is going to be blamed for that? Well, we know that they're not putting money at actually defending those swing seats. Instead, they're defending them from the left. But of course, progressives are going to be blamed ultimately.
Yeah, so there's a lot of points to make there. I'm going to let one of our members make the first one. Joseph Knight said, so it's wrong to primary incumbents. Should Jeffries step down? Because Hakeem Jeffries got to a seat by primarying a Democratic incumbent. So he doesn't mean that it's wrong to primary incumbents. He means it's wrong to primary conservative incumbents. When asked, hey, have you guys supported a single progressive incumbent Democrat? Nope. Did they form this and help Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib last cycle when they were being primaried by conservative Democrats? Nope. They didn't care about those primaries at all. Now that leads us back to the quote that Francesca read to you. He said, why are the members of the hard left targeting progressive members of Congress? Wait, Hakeem Jeffries, you're claiming to be progressive? You're claiming to be progressive. And you're now financing elections against progressives. You're a joke. If there were real reporters in the country, they would all call you a joke. Instead, they cover for you because they're corporate media, and they say, oh, well, he could be a progressive, could be. I mean, he's helped to kill every progressive piece of legislation there is. He's helped to fight back as aggressively as humanly possible against every progressive in Democratic primaries. But he calls himself a progressive, so we have to, no, I don't give you that title. No, you're not remotely progressive. You've never shown that. In fact, you're one of the biggest enemies of progressives, and you admit it, right? But what's funny is that is him calling himself progressive, because that means he knows we're more popular than he is. That's why he has to pretend to be on the progressive. But even so, he can't do it. He can't stomach it. He hates progressives so much, he calls them the hard left. The hard left. What hard left? Hard left that is fighting for Build Back Better. That's theoretically the Democratic administration's agenda. So what, reporters, you should ask Hakeem Jeffries, what part of Biden's agenda is hard left that you're so adamantly opposed to?
Oh, it's the child. I mean, honestly, it's senior citizens getting both dental and hearing aids. Like that's,
a bridge too far.
Radical.
Hard left, hard left.
Yeah, you're just alienating the majority of people who don't like all 5 of their senses. What about people who only like 3? Think about them. What about the center? 2 more notes. Y'all need to know, obviously, that Hakeem Jeffries is seen as the heir to the speakership if the Democrats actually retain the House, and if Nancy Pelosi ever steps down from that role and ever decides not to run again, because again, she's running again. So it doesn't really bode well for leadership. And also he's someone who's said, essentially coded in a way to hit at the squad, and specifically AOC, like, we have to be more than memes. That was like a quote that like, the squad is just a bunch of memes. That's a collection of memes. I mean, really, there's no difference from this line than what Republicans say about real progressives in the House. Just one horrible quote more from Hakeem Jeffries. He says, is there any evidence that their voting record, I'm assuming he means the hard left, and advocacy has been influenced by people who have contributed to them? Oh, excuse me, he means, he's basically saying there's no connection between who gives you money and how you vote. So he says, is there any evidence that their voting record and advocacy has been influenced by people who have contributed to them? Somehow we're supposed to theoretically believe that they're being unduly influenced because they're raising money from employee-supported political action committees. Okay, Hakeem, that's great. Well, let's look at one of the incumbents that you're defending, Shontel Brown in Ohio. Shontel Brown approved major contract, and then, hey, the contractor backed her campaign. And because of that, she's actually is facing an ethics probe over this exact same thing. It was a $17 million from the Perkins family who own the PERC. I don't know exactly what PERC is, but there's a lot of other pieces of evidence of this. But let's go to Carol Maloney. Carol Maloney, again, being defended. Some of her donors come from securities and investments firms, real estate, lawyers and law firms to the tune of $100,000. There you have $80,000 from insurance. Oh, don't forget pro-Israel. Again, a lot of the dark money that supported Shontel Brown as well against Nina Turner, $80,000 there. So, by the way, Shontel Brown just said after Amnesty International called what Israel's doing in the occupied territories apartheid, Shontel Brown came out and said, no, Amnesty International is wrong. So looks like that PAC got its money's worth when it comes to its campaign donations. So Hakeem, I'm pretty sure we're seeing a correlation there.
Yeah, so Amnesty International, well-known right-wing group. I'm sure that's why Shontel Brown is coming out against them. Calling, saying that they're wrong is absurd. Okay, look, you could have a difference of opinion. Is it honest or is it not honest? Well, Shontel Brown's campaign was helped by over $2 million from a PAC called Democratic Majority for Cleveland. Oh, sorry, my bad, not for Cleveland, for Israel. It's a PAC called Democratic Majority for Israel. It's in a Cleveland race. I don't know which part of Cleveland Israel's in. And so, well, did they get what they were looking for? Because Hakeem says they don't. They just give millions of dollars to Hakeem Jeffries, Shontel Brown, and all of these corrupt Democratic politicians, but they never get anything in return. They just don't mind, they're doing it for charity. It has nothing to do with Israel. Wait a minute, it says in the title, Democratic Majority for Israel. So what does Shontel Brown do? Not only does she help dismiss the Amnesty International report, she said earlier that she basically would never question Israel's funding. You get a couple of $1 million from a lobby, and then you say, I will never question that lobby. I'm sure it's a wild coincidence. Wild coincidence. How about Gottheimer? Gottheimer was one of the top Democrats fighting against Medicare being able to negotiate drug prices. That would give you lower drug prices. That is so popular, it polls at over 90% in the country, let alone in the Democratic Party. And Gottheimer just magically happen to be against 90% of the voters. Oh, golly gee, gets tons of money from drug companies and health insurance companies. But let me reread Hakeem Jeffries' hilarious quote. Is there any evidence that their voting record and advocacy has been influenced by people who've contributed to them? Yes, yes, Hakeem. There's overwhelming evidence. So
absolutely,
he's an absolute joke. And then he said, remember, he said, oh, well, they're in some sort of ideological contest against the rest of us. In other words, he's implying that there is no ideological difference. Oh, great. Then I'm sure you'll get your partner, Gottheimer, to vote with us on lower drug prices. Is he gonna do that? No, he's not, is he? Are you gonna fight for it? That's the other thing. And so they on some of the issues, they just flat out kill bills, right? And they do it on behalf of their corporate donors. And we've already shown you, what we just showed you was a tip of the iceberg. There's almost every one of their votes matches their corporate donors. That's the iceberg, and we've shown it to you 1,000 times on this show, right? But on top of that, there's the other part of it, which is, oh, we are for this agenda, but we just couldn't find a way to fight for it. Oh, did Manchin oppose it? Well, Manchin's a good Democrat. Sinema, they're good Democrats. No, we have to give up. We have to instantly give up. So Shontel Brown is now the incumbent. What does she do to get Build Back Better passed? Nothing, nothing. What does she do to fight for any of those progressive positions? Nothing, because they never wanted it to pass. Their donors told them, pretend you're in favor of passing, because they know that progressives win, certainly Democratic primaries, if people know what their actual policy positions are. We can show you the polling on those positions. And that's why they pretend to be progressives. And then when the minute they're in office, no, 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 no. I vote no on all progressive priorities. So by the way, these guys are gonna raise millions of dollars from the people who they work for, corporations, they're donors. They're deeply, deeply corrupt, right? So you have to fight back. There's no other choice. If you don't have money, no problem. You can volunteer, etc. You want to surrender to these guys?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my suggestions. First of all, the race that they care the most about is the Nina Turner race, because they know Nina Turner is gonna fight for you. And she's gonna fight for progressive and Democratic priorities. Why do you think they're scared out of their minds? Why did they if those PACs put $6 million into a completely unknown candidate, Shontel Brown? They picked her out of a hat. There was like 11 other people in that race that matched her credentials nearly identical, right? And they're like, who's the one who will do anything we tell them to? Oh, Shontel Brown is already in the middle of several corruption scandals. Perfect, she's the one we want, right? And they poured $6 million into her campaign last time around. So you gotta fight back, ninaturner.com/hello, because the reason they put $6 million into Shontel is not because of her. No one cares, she's just a robot, just fill in the blank, right? They were trying to stop Nina because they're worried that Nina Turner is not just progressive, but that she'll be the leader of progressives and she'll show them how to fight. And that's the number one thing Hakeem Jeffries doesn't want. As he hoards corporate cash in PACs like this and uses it against us, he's like, you better not fight back. And his number one ally in all of this, of course, is corporate media. Oh, I can't tell the difference between Democrats. Hakeem Jeffries might be a progressive. I don't know. I can't tell. Well, look at their votes. Look at their actions. So one more thing here. Just a couple of other races. That Dina Titus race in Nevada versus Amy Vilela. Amy Vilela, another really strong progressive. You should back her as well. She was in the original Lockdown the House movie with AOC and Cory Bush, and they're already in Congress. Her daughter died because of insurance issues. That's a fact. We covered it before. So they're also scared to death of Amy, because there's no way she's gonna stop until they get Medicare for all. And all of their donors hate Medicare for all. And so that's why Titus magically shows up on this list, because of her opponent. Her opponent is definitely uncorrupted. And if there's one thing these guys hate, it's people who are uncorrupted, which then finally leads to Cuellar. They ask about Cuellar. The guy is so corrupt. I mean, he didn't just do legalized bribery, Francesca. That's what they all do. That's their racket, right? He was like, oh, Azerbaijani oligarchs, I jump in it. And so the FBI had to raid his house for information about his illegal corruption. And they asked Hakeem Jeffries, well, you haven't backed him yet. He says it's the jury's out. Literally, he said, I think people shouldn't prejudge the outcome. Okay, why does he defend Cuellar? Because they're all corrupt. He's like, if I go after Cuellar, they can come after me. And they said, well, you haven't given him money yet. Why? He said, no specific reason. An FBI raid isn't a specific reason. You might lose that seat. Who do you think is going to be a better candidate? A progressive like Jessica Cisneros? You should also help her campaign.
Such a bad look. Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Sorry.
Or someone facing an FBI investigation in a seat that is not guaranteed to be Democratic. Well, you would massively weaken the Democratic Party if Cuellar is the candidate, and everybody knows that. And guys, think about it, it's so obvious. Imagine if a progressive had their offices and house raided by the FBI because of corruption. Do you think Hakeem Jeffries would go, I can't tell. I can't tell, the jury's out. Okay, we might support them later. No, because Cuellar is a dirty, corrupt, conservative Democrat, just like Hakeem Jeffries and Gottheimer. He's like, no specific reason. We might come and support that fine, upstanding fellow later, okay? No, these guys are the ones that pretend, they're the worst of the worst, because they pretend to be on our side. They work for their donors. They kill every piece of progressive legislation. And their new PAC is a joke. And I'll add one last way to fight back for you guys, rebellionpac.com. The whole point of Rebellion PAC is to fund progressives that do not have other options and that need funding against these corporate behemoths and their servants, Hakeem Jeffries, Josh Gottheimer, and the rest.
Amazing how it's never ideological whenever you're pro-corporate. That's not ideology. That's just how it is.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.